Tucson. Happy Thursday. I'm Ani Esquintella with 5 on 20, here to talk local art and culture. And today joining me, I have Saul Baldenegro, the director of Sacred Goals, which is an upcoming film. How are you today, Saul?
Hi, Anise. Good to be here.
Do you want to start just by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Like I said, my name is Sal Baldenegro. I'm a native of Tucson here, born and raised. I went to school at TUSD Public Schools my whole schooling career, including Tucson High School. I eventually went on to U of A, where I got my BA degree in media arts, which is film and television.
Awesome. And you've worked a little bit in production around Tucson, correct?
Yeah, I've worked professionally in media for KVOA, Channel 12, few jobs that I've had in media.
And this will be your first undertaking being the director of a film, correct?
Yeah, and this is my first feature film as a director.
It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your film and what it's about.
Okay, the film that I wrote, the screenplay for the film is called Sacred Goals, and it's primarily about two things. The first thing would be the fight to save ethnic studies in Tucson schools, and the second part is following the transformation of a young soccer player who starts to become more and more awakened to the struggle that's happening around him.
Okay, and you have a background in coaching soccer, correct?
Yeah, I have a background in both of those things. I was really involved in the fight for ethnic studies, and I coached soccer at Desert View High School for 4 years.
So for anyone that's unfamiliar with the battle surrounding the ethnic studies, do you want to just give us a quick rundown on what's happened with that?
Sure. The struggle to save ethnic studies has gone on for years and years. It started in the mid-2000s, but eventually it went on to moved on to 2010, where the Arizona State Legislature eventually passed a law, which is called HB 2281, to outlaw the teaching of ethnic studies in public schools. So that was passed in 2010. That's primarily around the era when this film takes place. But I mean, the fight to protect ethnic studies still goes on today. Even just recently, there was a bill that was introduced in the Arizona State Legislature which would have outlawed the teaching of ethnic studies in higher ed as well, including K-12. It would have outlawed it in colleges as well. Luckily, that was killed for now. But
Sure.
It's been a long struggle now, going over a decade.
So I think one of the interesting things about this film is that it's drawing a lot of parallels to a narrative that's taking place in the political climate right now. So it's hard for me to understand why anyone would be opposed to the teaching of ethnic studies. What do you think is the biggest argument against it?
You know, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons, and certainly people can draw their own conclusions, and you can really read into why they would want to kill these classes which are successful, which are motivating students, creating students who get better test scores, who get better grades in school, and who go on to college at higher rates. My personal opinion is that I think there's a big demographic shift in Arizona that's currently happening. You have a population which is becoming more and more Latino.
Correct.
And I think that there are a lot of extremists who are very fearful of that. And one way that they are responding is with these types of laws that, whether it's suppressing our vote, whether it's cutting our education, I think that that's really the motivation for why this law was passed and why this sentiment still exists today. Because like I said, you have these classes that were hugely successful.
Sure.
Kids were getting better scores in standardized tests compared to their peers. They were getting better grades compared to their peers, and they were going on to higher rates of college. To me, that's an outstanding success.
Yeah, absolutely.
So therefore, why would you want to do something to take those classes away?
Right.
You know, I think that unfortunately, those extremists feel that if you take people's culture away, if you take people's language away, then you can control them and you can mold them. We've seen an unfortunate history with regards to American Indians where they were sent to boarding schools, their hair was cut, their culture was taken from them, they were not allowed to speak their language, to practice their traditional customs. And it was all along the lines of the philosophy which they said, kill the Indian, save the man.
Right.
And I think that unfortunate philosophy, that very extreme and genocidal philosophy, I think that that's along the same lines of why you would want to take away children's culture, children's history, and remove them from that. So it's really, really a fight that is worth fighting, and it continues on today. It's so important that we maintain our culture, that we maintain our history, and that we keep education as something that's important. I mean, they were banning books. You know, there were dozens and dozens of books that were primarily written by Chicano authors, by Native American authors, black authors. And so it's just such an important fight to save our literature, to save our culture, and it's for the betterment of our community's education.
Absolutely. And when TUSD first proposed the removal of the ethnic studies, I know there was an immediate pushback, correct? There was a sit-in staged by some of the students. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like, or what the events following that were like?
Yeah, like I said, you know, this movement has gone on for a long time, but really this film takes place during that era. Mm-hmm. The film itself, I had to compress the timeline. What you're talking about is when the law was passed in 2010, spring of 2010. It then went on to be signed by then Governor Brewer in April.
No surprise there.
Yeah, I know. And so that's when things really started ramping up. And so that's when, I believe it was April of 2010, there was a historical moment of civil disobedience that I believe is one of the most important Latino civil rights movements of the past few decades. And what it was a group of students organized, and on the night of the school board meeting, they took over the school board dais, and when the school board members hadn't sat down yet, they sat in the seats, they took it over, they chained themselves to the desk, and they declared a proclamation of support for ethnic studies, and that they were basically voting to protect it and to keep it right there. They called themselves the Youth School Board, and that they were going to vote right then and there to save ethnic studies. And I think that was such an admirable, courageous, amazing piece of civil disobedience that will go down in history as one of the most important moments, I think, in Latino civil rights history. So that certainly is an important moment of this film.
Sure. Yeah. From then to now, where does the placement of ethnic studies and that fight go on in regards to the school board now?
It still goes on today. Unfortunately, the law is still on the books. It's still being tried in court, 7 years later. It's
right.
still in court. To this point, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down 2 of the 4 provisions, but kept intact the other 2. However, it's not over. They're supposed to be hearing the case again sometime this year in 2017. So still 7 years down the line from when that law was passed, it's still in court, we're still fighting it, and the fight to protect these classes and for our culture still continues on.
Okay.
And like I said, even this legislator in Phoenix, in the state legislature, he's actually from northern Arizona, tried to introduce a law to ban ethnic studies at the college level as well. So, this fight is far from over.
Sure. Would you say that the current political climate or the new administration, maybe some of the rhetoric used by them, has influenced your need to make the film or influence anything in regards to production of the film?
You mean the national rhetoric that's going on right now? Or?
Yeah, it kind of seems to be heating up in a sense.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I want to say about that nationally. One thing that I think is amazing is that in Arizona, what happened in Arizona ended up inspiring people across the country to create ethnic studies programs of their own or to protect their own ethnic studies programs. For example, the state of California passed a law that is to develop a model ethnic studies curriculum for all their high school students. So this is the opposite of what happened in Arizona. Mm-hmm. But it's a domino effect. It's something that the fight for ethnic studies was so intense here and so important that it did inspire people nationwide. And you saw the opposite effect occurring in places like California, New York, Texas, where there was a big fight over books that they won. And these fights were really inspired by the courageous student-led fight for ethnic studies here in Arizona. But unfortunately now on the national level, there is certainly a lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric, xenophobic, anti-Latino rhetoric. It's just very right-wing, extreme type of things that are going on with this new Trump administration. But, I feel that one of the most important ways that we can resist that is to continue telling our stories and to continue writing.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Continue proactively maintaining our culture. I think that it's very important certainly to be reactive at times to so much of what's going on that is an attack on so many different people on so many different fronts. And we have to maintain vigilance and react to that. But one way that we can proactively resist is to continue to create and tell our own stories and write and create art and paint and make music and whatever type of things like that is the best way to proactively resist to that xenophobic rhetoric that's going on right now. And that's part of the reason why I wrote this.
Sure.
That they may be able to ban books, they may be able to ban our history temporarily, but they can't ban us from telling our stories. And we will continue to tell them forever.
When these events were unfolding before you in the early 2000s, did you think then that you'd be making a film about it?
No. It's funny that, I've thought about that. And one of the things that unfortunately happened during that time is everyone involved was just so busy fighting that we were so intensely, spending all of our energy fighting and reacting and doing, these are important things, but this is where our energy was focused. And so it left very little time and energy for us then to create art. Now that I guess things have somewhat gotten a little more to even keel or a little not as intense. It's allowed us to breathe and to create pieces of art, whether it's, like I said, whether it's music or painting or what I'm doing, film, plays, that type of thing. So to get to your question, at the time, no, I never thought that I'd be doing this kind of thing. But it just so inspirational. I mean, looking back, when you reflect on the things that happened, it's just amazing. And I do hold that what those students did is one of the most important Latino civil rights events in history. And I think that the books will vindicate that, and the books will go back and look at what those students did, those brave students, fighting against very powerful politicians. I mean, they were fighting against governors and the attorney general, school superintendents for the state, local school boards, local school superintendents. And these were students that organized themselves and fought against them. So I think that what they did was just so incredibly powerful and moving and inspiring that motivated me to write this film and to tell their story.
Sure.
The way I perceive the things that went on. The other part of the motivation is my experience as a soccer coach. I got to see a lot of things on that level that I felt were very powerful too. One of the things that, a personal story that happened during one of our games was we were playing against a school, and I won't name the school. Don't need to go there right now. But I will say that one of their players was going around telling our kids that my dad's an attorney and he'll deport all of you. And it's such a provocative comment. There's so much behind that. But credit to my kids, to my players, my students, that they kept their cool and they focused and they won decisively. So it takes a lot of strength to be able to face those kinds of insults and rhetoric with that kind of hateful tone, but to keep your cool, to focus on the game at hand, and to be a band of brothers, to be a team with a singular focus of succeeding and doing well on the field. And we were so tight as a group and so close, and those type of things I think actually had the opposite effect because they helped really to bond us.
Yeah.
And it's just such powerful stories. You know, sometimes we would go through the checkpoints along the I-19 going south to
Right.
Nogales. We play Nogales. Or Sierra Vista. There's a border checkpoint going to
Right.
Buena too. And again, you know, there are some students who would be a little freaked out about it. And it sort of wakes you up as myself as a citizen to not necessarily have that worry, but then to think, oh man, why are they freaking out?
Right.
I can guess why. And so then later on we had the talk about applying for DACA, for deferred action for childhood arrivals and that kind of thing.
Right.
And so we got them down that road of applying for it and gaining their DACA status. But it was a powerful thing for me to have my eyes opened up to that kind of thing. And there's just other events that we'd face teams that were, like I said, saying racist stuff, and their
Right.
fans would. But you know, my students would just keep focused on the game. And like I said, it was such a close bond that we had, and we had a lot of fun along the way. And so that's part of my experience of why I'm telling this story too. And another true story that's real interesting on the soccer angle is that Tucson High School was really the epicenter of where this was all happening.
Sure.
There were many schools that had ethnic studies classes, but Tucson High was really sort of the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
During that same time, basically a couple years down the road, the boys soccer team won a state championship for Tucson High. And this was their first state championship for 26 years. So it was like these parallel events that were going on at the same time. And just, I thought that, man, what a crazy, I guess, couple of years,
Sure.
where you had so much going on at one place.
Yeah.
And it was part of my motivation, part of my inspiration to write this kind of story with the two parallel themes that eventually intersect.
Right. What state of production is the film in currently?
We are currently in development, and we are raising money to produce the film.
And then how are you raising the money for that?
We've started a crowdfunding page on Indiegogo.com. The film is called Sacred Goals, and you can find it if you go to Indiegogo.com and search for Sacred Goals.
Mm-hmm.
So we're at that point of raising money to try to produce the film. We're trying to raise $100,000. So far we've got up to $5,000, which is 5%. We still have a ways to go, but we only launched it last week. And
That's
we've already-
great. Yeah.
We've already hit the $5,000 mark.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Awesome.
The plan is hopefully the crowdfunding page will end in 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we hope to have enough money to go forward and shoot the film in the summer, hopefully, edit the film by the fall, and release it by the end of the year.
Awesome.
And I want to also talk about my collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Jorge Luis Urbina, and he is from Arizona, and he also went to the U of A. He got his Bachelor of Fine Arts in Media Arts from the U of A School of Film, Theater, and Theater, Film, and Television, where we both went to school. That's where we met. We're working on this together. He's a very, very talented cinematographer, and both of us are really excited about doing this. And so that's my collaborator, and I wanted to give him a shout out.
Shout out heard. Awesome. And for anyone wanting to stay up to date with the production or how the film's coming along, what would be the best way to do that?
Certainly the Indiegogo page is up right now.
Okay.
We're also working on starting a Facebook page, which is going to be Sacred Goals Facebook page, and a website, which would be sacredgoalsfilm.com.
Awesome. Well, Saul, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming and talking about it.
Thank you,
I'm
Anise.
looking forward to the film's completion. Excited about it.
Thanks, Anise.
This has been Anias Quintella for 5 on 20. Have a happy Thursday, Tucson. We'll see you next time.